And we're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the internets. This is Matt Gibson and bringing you another episode of Kingdom of Rock. What's up, Kingdom of Rock? How's everybody doing today? Oh, wait, I can't hear you guys, but everyone here is doing awesome.
Yeah.
That's right. We've got an awesome star-studded panel of guests today with Mr. Michael Molenda as my co-host. And we've got Mr. Derek Frank and Cory Churko here today to talk about hopefully better things than all the problems that our world is suffering with right now. But we're going to talk about that a little bit too, because that's obviously the giant elephant in the room. But how are you guys doing, Derek and Cory?
Doing all right. Hanging in there.
Yeah, doing great here. Yep. Yeah. Managing to weather the storm.
Yeah, that's all anybody can do right now, right?
Yeah, trying to make the situation,
Yeah, Mike, how's it going in the Frisco area up there?
It's going fine. We're still sequestered. The warm air of late has been interesting because there's been more people kind of congregating, which seems insane, and joggers running through crowds of people. It's like, come on, man, what the hell what is the matter with the world?
Common sense, right?
Kind of common sense.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of people that are not using that right now.
Exactly.
We have a park right by our house, and they've put signs up around it saying the park is closed. Don't go to the park because that's where people congregate. The last couple of days we've been driving by, and there's people at the picnic tables, like in groups having lunch and stuff. It's like, oh man, not everybody's paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, my cousin lives in Arizona, and she's sending me these things about them on these speed boats on the lakes. I'm going, how the hell can you do that? We can't even get into a park in California, much less a lake, much less get on a boat, much less, risk getting sick. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think the governor, I shared an article yesterday, Governor Gavin Newsom, he's saying that we shouldn't be optimistic about gathering together to go to events until we get a vaccine. And some people are talking 12 to 18 months before that could happen. So it's kind of looking bleak. I know, Cory, you're in LA. Derek, are you in California too?
I am in LA. Yeah.
In LA. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of looking bleak for live music here right now.
Well, even restaurants. I mean, there was a report where even if they open the restaurants next month, you're probably going to be served by servers in masks and gloves, and they're going to remove half the tables. Once again, it would be nice to go out and sit in a restaurant, but not if I'm, being waited on by aliens and, there's only three tables in the joint.
And they're going to scan you for your temperature too when you walk in, or they're saying it could look like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a guy from China, Dave Reffitt was on, and he lives in China right now. He's a musician, and he says you have to get a QR code on your phone, and to go anywhere, you would have to get certified as being disease-free and then scan the QR code to get into places.
Wow.
So it's definitely a brave new world.
Well, it's gonna be weird because on the face of it, we haven't really been sequestered all that long, depending on where you live. And I mean, we're kind of all flipping out, and the economy's going into the toilet just for a few weeks. I mean, if we can't gig or get out there on the road and earn, just talking about the musician community and specifically until the end of the year or next year, I shudder to think what that's going to do to all of us.
Man.
Yeah. So you both, Derek and Cory, you guys are both, on major tours, playing with, major artists and everything. Like, have you guys had to, how far are you guys pushing out right now for your dates and everything?
Well, let's see. Right now, I'm scheduled to get back to work at the end of June. We both, Cory and I were out with Shania in Vegas. That got canceled. That got canceled in March, obviously, and then we had a May run that just got canceled. I do the residency with Gwen Stefani as well. We had a little bit of a run in May that was canceled. So now I still have on the books a Europe tour in July and a one-off at the end of June. So I'm hoping that stays in place. We'll see.
Yeah, and our next Shania slot looks like August. I mean, unless that gets canceled as well. But I've had a lot of two dates as well in the summertime. It's going to be our busiest year yet. and most of those have been canceled already, or postponed.
Which, by the way,
the festival season in Canada is very very small because of the weather, so more than likely it'll all be canceled.
I would like to say, though, if you guys haven't listened to Took before, I was checking out the music today. It's great. It's great hard rock music. You should check it out.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And
Cory, show us the cup.
Yeah.
Show us the cup. There we go.
Nice.
And of course.
Cool.
So for those of us that are not Canadian, can you guys explain the word toque for those that are unaware of that?
It's better if I demonstrate.
Show and tell.
So this is a toque.
That's a toque, eh?
It's just a ski, it's a winter hat. Any kind of beanie is a toque. Pom-pom really solidifies that it is a toque, but it could be just a beanie without a pom-pom.
Well,
awesome.
let me ask you this, Cory. What, like, when you first got into music, like, it's kind of like what, of course, none of us ever anticipated we would be in a mess like this, right?
Yeah.
But like, what got you into music? Like, what's kind of a little bit of a little abbreviated version of your musical story and how you got into the business?
My dad had bands when I was very young. And so I'd always watch them rehearse and stuff in our basement. And then at a certain point, we all started learning piano, like all my siblings and myself. And that branched out to guitar, and my brother played drums, my sister played keys. And right about that time, my dad's band broke up. So he's like, hey, you guys want to play for my sister's wedding? And it's my Aunt Delphine. And that was my first gig. And literally, I wasn't playing guitar at the time because I was only 7. But I sang Ben, that Michael Jackson song,
Yeah.
Ben.
Awesome.
and I think I sang one of the songs. I sang I Only Want to Be With You by the Bay City Rollers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and slept behind the amplifiers. So that kind of started my music career, playing in a family band till I was around 19. Then the family band broke up. I moved to Vancouver. I started my own original bands, rock, and I financially provided for those with a country band, a country cover band called the Underground Outlaws, and eventually put out albums under the Underground Outlaws, albums under the Explorers, which was the original rock project. Then those bands broke up, and I got out of music altogether because I was all burnt out playing in bars six nights a week. And then I literally went back to school for computer animation, worked in an animated children's show for like 6 months, loved it. It was like a Transformers kind of show. And then I literally got a call out of nowhere to go play with Shania, or to audition for it. My audition was actually playing on the David Letterman show.
So how does that come out of nowhere? Somebody must have saw you somewhere.
Yeah, I want to know that.
So the record company in Canada was asked to find a fiddle player. Actually, that's how I got hired. Yeah, I wasn't even as a guitar player. Mm-hmm. And they asked around in the scene in Canada, who knows young, energetic fiddle player? And my name came up twice, and that was enough to get them to call me. And when they called me, they left a message on my machine and said, hey, this is so-and-so from Mercury Records, and we represent a couple of artists, one of which needs a young, energetic fiddle player. Your name came up, and you should call us back. And I didn't, because I knew it was, in Canada, it's probably like a new budding artist. They wanted me to come and go on the road and starve like I had been. Mm-hmm. And I had a nice new job with benefits and all that. And so it's not that I didn't call back. It's just that I kind of wasn't on the front of my mind. I just forgot about it. So they called back a few days later and said, look, we're a little discreet about who it's for. And it's for Shania Twain, so you should really give us a call. And of course, I knew who Shania was. I knew who Mutt Lange was.
Right.
Her husband at the time, AC/DC producer, Def Leppard producer, Brian Adams,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mega producer. And so I was like, I got on the phone right away, even though it was like almost midnight at home in Vancouver. I was living at the time. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I'm interested. Let me know. Call me back. And so they did. I sent in a promo package, went back to work, not thinking that anything would happen. And sure enough, like a week later, her tour manager called and said, hey, Shania and Mutt reviewed your package, and they'd really like to get you out to New York to play with her on the David Letterman show as your audition. So,
Wow,
yeah, that was kind of how I got into the big time. But it was through playing fiddle, and I'd always considered myself a guitar player up to that point. But it was the fiddle that opened the doors for me in the bigger arena.
But you said yes, and that's what really matters, right?
I
You were
said yes.
you were ready enough to just go for it, you know?
Yeah, because I was putting myself through school, animation school, playing fiddle on the streets of Vancouver for spare change. I was a busker for about 4 years, and that's kind of where I learned to play the fiddle. Because even though I was recommended as a fiddle player, I think that person that recommended me only saw me play one song in the whole night, and that was at the end of the night when everybody's drunk. It was like the Orange Blossom Special, and it didn't matter how good you were, as long as you're just scratching, sawing something out, they would go crazy. And that's it's that one song that sort of got me referred to the Shania camp, and it was my playing on the streets of Vancouver that got me ready for the whole thing. Man,
you just never know when the spotlight's going to drop on you. That's an awesome story.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I had I don't know how totally true this is, but there was a Mutt Lange story when he first started producing Shania. All the Nashville session pros were used to doing like 6 sessions a day, go in for an hour, gone. And I guess Mutt locked everybody down for no one's leaving here for 2 weeks or something. This is all you're going to do. And there was almost a revolution of the session people. It's like, well, I can't work on anything else. Well, what could possibly take more than an hour to do a record? And I guess they went in there with a lot of attitude and all that. And then,
you broke them down.
Well, for most of them, though, they did say, that he could hear stuff that was pretty crazy, little weird things out of tune and all that he would just bust everybody, so.
You can't help being around Mutt and coming out of that a better musician with a better ear, more fine-tuned. When I first joined that camp, he would say things like, "That's really great, Cory, but can you just play everything just back 10 milliseconds?" I didn't know what that was at the time. But, I really learned how crappy of a player I was when I went to that camp. But it brought my game up, a lot, just being around him. And I remember there was a story about Dan Huff, the guitar player. He did a lot of the stuff for Shania. He said that at one time he was in the booth tracking the Shania stuff, and he said Mutt would just make him play it over and over and over again. He said at a certain point he just like fixated at a point in the wall and just kind of went into a meditation just to get him through the session.
Dude, am I the only person that wore that Giant record that he made out, that first Giant record?
I love that.
Oh my God, it was so good. He's such a tasty player. Totally. Dan Huff, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Derek, so what brought you into the music business? what's your story?
It's a little different than Cory's. I did not grow up in a musical family. I'm the only one that's doing it, but my family liked music, and we used to go to concerts when I was a kid. And I think I just as a kid, like when I first saw live music, I was like, I want to do that. And that was kind of shortly before MTV came out. And then when MTV came out, I was just like fixated on it. I would watch MTV for hours a day. I'm just like, man, that is cool. I want to do that. So just when the time came, I got a guitar, took some lessons, eventually discovered bass a few months later, really got hooked on that. And just kind of went from there, just kind of went all in.
Was it difficult? I grew up in an Italian family, and man, same thing as you. I was the only musician in the family, and they did not dig me wanting to be a rock and roll musician. How was it in your family? Were they supportive, or?
I'm very lucky to have a supportive family. Like they supported me in it from day one. I didn't get too many of those speeches about having something to fall back on.
Oh, those speeches.
They thought that I was serious about it. And, once they saw how much time I was putting into it and seeing that things were happening, like I was, I don't know, doing some gigs when I was a teenager, and I don't know, once they saw that I was serious about it, they encouraged me.
So what was you started as guitar? What was it that said, "Oh man, bass is going to be my thing"?
I just I was in my local music store. I was at that time I was living in Connecticut, New Canaan, Connecticut. And we had the store called Merritt Music, where I would take my lessons. I would take my guitar lessons. And one day I was just waiting for my lesson. I was down just messing around the store. And I saw a bass on the wall and I was like, what's that? And the guy's like, oh, that's a bass guitar. And I was like, oh, can I check that out? He brought it down, I played it, and I was just like, wow, this is cool. Like, I didn't really know the difference between a bass and a guitar. Just, I thought bands had just two guitar players. I didn't know what that was. I was playing it. I was like, wow, this thing's cool. And I just pretty much decided right then that would be my instrument. Because I'd only been playing guitar for maybe like 6 months at that time. And I was like, you know what? I want to play this. So yeah, I was a caddy at the time at the golf course, and I saved up my caddying money and went and bought a bass when I got enough together. I bought a Kramer Duke bass for $180. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those Steinberger copies, like headless, That was my first bass.
Did it have the little knee thing so you could play it while sitting down?
Oh, mine didn't. No, but I remember that was like the next level thing that had the little like leg rest thing. Yeah.
It's like Steinberger innovations.
Currently, there seems to be a lack of headless headstock basses in your collection there. Did you?
It's really funny that you say that, because just on Reverb this morning, I bought a headless double neck bass.
Wow.
You're
coming back.
I've just been browsing Reverb, whatever. That's the dangerous part of like being in quarantine. Your mind starts to wander. You start to look at all these instruments on Reverb, and I found this one. It's a double neck fretless and fretted, and I was like, man, that thing's cool. And there's a community of bass players here in LA. We have this text thread going. We're always talking shit to each other, whatever. And I posted a picture of the bass yesterday, and I was like, should I do it? And everybody was just like, yes, get it. And so I just bought that this morning.
Awesome, congratulations.
So that'll be my sole headless bass, in my collection, and happens to be a double neck.
That's crazy.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I can't wait to see it.
It's always been like in the back of my mind, like, man, it'd be cool to get a double neck bass at some point. Not that I have much practical or any practical use for it, but I was just like, there's just like kind of fun things to have in the collection. But the ones I've seen over the years are just crazy expensive. They're like Rickenbackers or something really rare, and they're just crazy expensive. And this one came up, and it wasn't that much. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it.
Nice.
So Cory, let me ask you, what was like a defining moment? Like when you're getting started, you come up, you get the Shania call. Obviously, being on stage in front of that many people on the Letterman show, obviously, what was that like? Was that like a one of those like unreal moments where you're just like, I can't believe this is happening?
Yeah, totally. Like I think we had one rehearsal day before where the whole band met because everybody was new. And Mutt came in the room and Shania came in the room, and it was like, okay, this is getting real now. We played through the song. I think we did 1 or 2 songs because we were practicing for Letterman and Good Morning America the next morning. And so once it came down to showtime, because I'd done quite a bit of shows. I'd done a lot of festivals, but I'd never done something that big. And honestly, if my career would have ended after Letterman, that would have been a nice cap to what I thought my musical career was going to be.
Yeah.
To go back working on the animation show and then say, yeah, I played Letterman. That was the crowning achievement of my career in music. So honestly, I can't really remember the show because I think it was just like, oh my God, I'm on Letterman, and it was just flashing by. But luckily you can see it on YouTube. So that's kind of how I revisit that now.
That's cool. Did you get nerves? I mean, are you like where you're like, feel like weird inside and you're like, oh, anxiety and that kind of thing?
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that and make sure that you give a good performance?
That's a good question. And I think the more you try to resist, I'm not going to be nervous, the more nervous you get. And I think on fiddle especially, when you get nervous, it shows, because it's hard enough playing fiddle because there's no frets, right? So pitch is always a problem. When you're nervous, it's even a bigger issue. And then also your bowing arm can literally shake, right?
Right.
And luckily it wasn't like a slow song, because if you're doing long bow, slow song stuff, that would really be noticeable. But this is quite a fast fiddling kind of tune, so that worked out good. But honestly, the best thing for nerves is rehearsal. You know, the more you play something, the more confident you feel playing it. The more confident you feel in your gear, that it's going to be fine, that your sounds are going to be fine. Something that really gets me is when my nerves, and I almost can't recover from, is when my gear isn't like I practiced. So in the old days, you would always have backline stuff, right? If you'd fly to something, and you would practice on something, and you could bring your pedal board, but you know, if the amps, the speakers are bad, the tubes are bad, it always throws my game if I'm like, oh, what's going on? Because then I think about it, I'm like, okay, what's wrong? And then I forget what I'm playing, you know?
Right.
So, but now with the digital age, and I'm a huge digital, you know, like Kemper, Helix, those kind of things. I'm a huge advocate in those, because you can practice that at home, fly with it, set it up. It's going to be exactly like you practice with. You can take that element out of things that can go wrong, and then it's only going to be better for your playing.
Hey, what's it like when you joined the band? Letterman was your audition. You know, typically if you're in a band and they go, "Hey man, you're going to be on Letterman or whatever," you go, "Okay, but we're all together, so this is cool." But you literally were kind of, you know, I guess you had just met these people before you went on. Was it weirder to kind of not have that, you know, aggregate of friends to go on and do something that big?
Yeah, and you know, if we hadn't had that one day of rehearsal, because that's usually all it takes to get to know someone's personality and to feel like you're part of something, and to find out who's new and how, you know, if they're nervous, then you can feel a little bit of companionship in that. If we hadn't had that first day, it would have been really crazy just to walk in and go, okay, you're on, let's do a sound check. Okay, let's play the show. But luckily that rehearsal day really makes a big difference in, you know, how confident you feel.
Hey, and Derek, how do you deal with consistency of sound when you're digging, as Cory just mentioned? Does that stuff freak you out, or do you have your rig together to where it always sounds the way you want it?
Well, these days I'm using a Kemper as well, so it's kind of the thing, you know. Yeah, like both with Gwen and Shania, both of those shows, they're clean stages, no amps. So I use a Kemper on both of those, so it's consistent, you know. We can't always backline Kempers, so when we go to festivals, I have a Line 6 HX Stomp, but it's, you know, it's like one of the little, it's like the little mini Helix, and I use that for some of these one-offs that we do. But even that, like, I've programmed my sounds, it sounds the same everywhere we go. You know, everything's in-ears. So yeah, it's a similar thing. I mean, I think most touring people that are doing gigs like that are using the digital stuff now.
Now, how much does it depend on if you get a crap or an awesome monitor mixer when you're doing this? Because even though you've got your stuff all dialed, if you have a less than groovy monitor mixer, that could be a problem.
Yeah, definitely. But luckily, when you're on a consistent gig, like we are with our artists, we usually have a consistent team. We have, like, you know, we bring our own monitor person. It's the same person that we use for, you know, every other show we do. So they've got a mix saved. Yeah. And I've been lucky to work with some really good monitor people that can even just show up and have a mix ready to go, like kind of guessing what you would want, you know. Been lucky with that.
So Derek, what was your defining moment? Like, where you know, when you went from, like, you know, I'm working my way up the ranks, and I'm getting, you know, meeting new people and playing. What was your, like, wow, man, I just made it?
I don't know if I had that moment yet. I don't know. Like, it's you know, they always say it's about the journey, not the destination. You know, I feel like it's just kind of like an ongoing process. You know, I mean, I've had a lot of really fun gigs over the years. I've done a lot of tours, been all over the world with a lot of great artists, and had some really great moments playing. But, you know, I don't feel like I've made it yet. I don't know. I feel like I just kind of want to keep doing what I'm doing, you know.
What's it like to play with Gwen Stefani? She's like one of my favorite artists. She's awesome.
Well, I can talk about one moment where it hit me that I was playing with her. It was because I got the call for Gwen. I was on tour with another artist in 2018, a little over 2 years ago. I was in China with this artist named Daniel Powder. And during that tour, I got a call for Gwen, and it was like she was starting in like 2 weeks. I was still on tour and I couldn't make all the rehearsals, but they were cool with it. They're like, yeah, just learn your stuff and show up, you know. It was kind of a rough time in my life as well. So it's like I was kind of in a weird headspace, and I was like, yeah, great, cool. I'm going to play with Gwen Stefani when I get back from the store. Great. And I still hadn't really soaked in yet, because I'm a fan. Like, I'm a big fan of Gwen and No Doubt. They're great songs. Oh, yeah. And I was just kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to start this gig when I get back. And just kind of got to work on the tunes. And then we're in rehearsals with Gwen when I got back. And then at one point when like the choreographers are blocking the show and they're like involving the band in interaction with Gwen on the stage and stuff, we're rehearsing. We played Sunday Morning, and I'm out there in front of just like in Gwen's face. We're rocking out playing Sunday Morning, you know, this awesome No Doubt hit. And after that song, I like kind of went back to my riser position. I was like, wow, I just got to play Sunday Morning with Gwen Stefani. Like, that was cool.
Right.
When like that hit me on that gig, like, holy shit, I'm playing with Gwen, you know. And I have a lot of those moments in the show now. Like pretty much every time we're interacting on stage, or we're just like making eye contact, you know, I'm playing and all that. Like, it's just kind of like, wow, this is cool that I get to do this.
Yeah. Is it almost like dreamlike sometimes?
It is. It is.
You're just like, is this real? Like,
yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously, like, you know, I've worked my way up to get to that level where I've been able to play with people like Gwen and Shania and some other people. Yeah. You know, I've done pretty much every gig you can imagine. So I feel like, yes, I worked my way up to it, but I still just, I don't know, I just feel incredibly grateful that I get to do it, you know?
Yeah. One of the things we should ask, I mean, this happened a lot when I was at Guitar Player, is that, you know, playing with a big artist like both of you guys are, you know, a lot of guitar players would ask, well, you know, hey man, I've got my technique down. I can blow anybody off the stage. I can shred like anything. Why aren't I playing with, you know, Gwen Stefani and Shania Twain? That the world is not fair. But as you both know, right, there is a certain way to comport yourself, you know, to have your stuff together, and also to be a person that those artists want to interact with. How did you find that footing in your own story?
Well, it's just about first thing is you got to be where the action is. You got to be in, you know, a city like LA or Nashville where these things are put together, where someone might be able to think of you for the gig. Like, if you're like in Ohio and, you know, you're just like posting YouTube videos in your bedroom or something, like, no one's going to think, oh, this guy's a great player, we should get him out here to play on this tour. Like, you kind of have to be in the city where it's all happening, build relationships, make friends with all the players in town, get your name out there so that when opportunity comes up, they'll think of you. So that's the start, just being here, you know?
And then maybe Cory, sorry, go ahead, Cory.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's so much more to doing what we do than just being good at your instrument. In fact, you know, you can be an amazing player in your bedroom with your guitar up to here, you know, on your lap or whatever. Everybody can play good like that. But when you're looking the part, when you sling your guitar down a bit lower, all that technique goes out the door. You have to relearn how to play standing up, you know. Mm-hmm. So like Derek said, you have to get out and play, and you learn all those techniques of, you know, where it looks best, how to pose, because unfortunately that's a big part of the gig. You know, the way you look, the way you interact with people. Do you look like you're playing to the back wall, or are you engaging eye contact and looking like you're having fun? All that stuff you can't just learn. You have to get out and play. And you know, most of the gigs that we get, that Derek and I have gotten, are because of our network. You know, as a music director for Shania, I've needed musicians in the past, and you know, I'll always consider the guys on YouTube, but there's always that question in mind: how are they going to look standing up? How are they going to interact, the chemistry with the other people? Can they sing? Because singing is a big part of this business. If you are just a great guitar player and there's another great guitar player and he sings as well, he's going to get the job. So there's so many different variables than just being good at your instrument. That's obviously the best place to start because you have to be proficient, but it's not necessary to be a monster unless you're, you know, specifically being hired for that monster guitarist role, you know, where you have to blister out something. But a lot of stuff you're going to be playing, especially in pop music, isn't going to be technical, you know, but it is technical in the sense you have to build a copy of sound. You know, okay, what did he use to record this? How am I going to replicate that? The parts are usually quite easy, to be honest. I played with Kelly Clarkson for, you know, 12 years, and I think I did 2 solos in the whole night. But I had to copy those sounds of those parts as best that I could, and that's all part of the gig. And the best way to do that is to really get out and play with other people. And it's harder and harder, you know, these days because there are fewer and fewer venues.
Sure.
When Derek and I were growing up, it was like, you know, I said it was 6 nights a week. And sometimes two shows on a Saturday. You did a jam session or a matinee, they called it, and then you played every night as well. So,
well,
it's all part of it.
And as a musical director, you know, you're not only finding people who have got the chops, but you're also kind of protecting the band that's already there as well as the main artist when you bring somebody in. You want to make sure that the person's not going to flip out or whatever. What do you feel are some of the mistakes that some aspiring musicians make when they're trying to get these gigs where you would go, oh, no, there's no way anyone's going to hire you if you're like that? And I'm not talking necessarily about substance abuse, but more just about regular attitude or comfort level, whatever.
There is something to be said about trying too hard in an audition. You know, we want to see how you look playing, but usually you're going to be in a rehearsal space where there's nobody there. And so you have to, it's a tricky thing because even, you know, I think about how I would approach it, and you don't want to rock out too hard because that looks silly, but you want to be able to show that you look comfortable and you can groove, right? In looks and that sort of thing. You also don't want to be too needy. There's been times when drummers have come in and go, oh dude, I need to set up my cymbals. Okay. And he sets up his cymbals. Oh, I need about half an hour with the monitor guy to get my ears just right, you know. And these are guys that are really, really good players, but that kind of leaves a bad taste in an audition. So, you know, it's kind of like it's a people thing. If you're not comfortable with people and you can't take clues and hints, it's tricky. You know, it's a social thing. You have to be good around people, and that is nowhere to be found on the stage. It's something you learn in school, you know, as a kid. You have to be able to know those cues, and all that stuff is going to help you get the gig ultimately. If you know how to play and you know how to joke around and have fun, but you can be serious, and you know how to learn your parts. Technology is such a big thing now. You can actually take a part and slow it down so you get everything just right. I've had to go through, after someone's been hired, I've had to go through and teach a person their part in front of everybody, not on purpose, just because we had a lack of time. I was like, okay, we have to do this. So I actually got a laptop out and slowed it down and go, okay, these are your notes. Because I didn't really know what they were. I just said, hey, learn this part and we'll get together and rehearse. If you're scared of technology, then that's going to work against you. So, you know, there's so much to being, would you say, Derek? There's so much more than just being able to play.
Oh God, yeah. And self-awareness is such a big part of it. Like when you're working with a pop artist or whatever, solo artist, because you got to realize that it's not about you. The gig is not about you. You were there to support the artist. You are there to make them sound good and fit in with that band the best that you can. So you have to be aware of yourself, observant of your surroundings, figuring out the best way to fit into that. You know, you mentioning the whole performance and image aspect of it. It's like, yeah, you don't want to go on some gig with a pop artist and just be like rocking out, banging your head, like acting like some total like thrash metal freak if that's not what the vibe is on the gig. And likewise, if it's a thing where the band is rocking out and everybody's pretty active on stage, you don't want to be a guy that's like just kind of standing there looking at the ground while you're playing. So you have to be kind of observant of like what everybody else is doing and how you can fit into that. So yeah, I think self-awareness is a big key to that. Not everybody has that, you know?
When we talk about artist development, you know, like if you're an independent artist and you're trying to either break into the scene where you're going to be working with a high level artist, or you're trying to build your own brand, do you think things like acting lessons and things like that are worth investing in? Or like what could you do to, if somebody was trying to improve themselves in the area of social, like they're like, look, man, I know I'm a diva, I'm a shredder, I know I have a little bit of an ego, like, but I want to integrate, I want to make a better career for myself, or I want to be a part of a team. What can people do to work on that kind of stuff?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about acting lessons. I think people just need to be just kind of analyze themselves a little bit. Like if like for me, there's been, I've auditioned for so many things over the years, and it kind of took me a while to actually start getting the gigs. I would audition for tons of stuff and not get the gig. So every time I didn't get the gig, I tried to like analyze it and figure out why I didn't get it. I'd look at the person that did get it and I'd say, okay, what did he do that I didn't do? And what can I do differently? And so I would kind of try to learn from each of those experiences, so I think people need to kind of do that. Just kind of when things don't work out for them, try to figure out why they didn't work out. And when things do work out, try to figure out why it did work out, Yeah,
it's just being aware of what your scenario that you're in requires. For instance, I played with Slash on a tour last summer, and I filled in for Frank Sidoris.
Mm-hmm.
And usually I don't play my guitar really high, but I don't play it really low. But when I was called in to fill in for Frank, I kind of looked at what he was already doing, and his guitar is quite low. So I had to lower my guitar so that it wasn't a big awkward change for Slash and the rest of the band to have this guy coming in. And so it was just looking at what your scenario is going to be and adjusting, being able to adjust. And that means so much when you can just look at something and analyze it, not be caught up in your own thing. And like Derek said, if you're moving like crazy on stage and rocking out and no one else is, then you better dial it back, or someone's going to speak to you.
Yeah. And I've seen that. Like, I've seen that in audition.
On the other side of things, if everyone else is rocking out and you're just standing there, then you better bring up your game on that. So it's just looking around.
Totally. And I've seen that, like in auditions, like when I used to do a bunch of those cattle call auditions, I would see people just come in and just like act like idiots, and you're just looking at this person like, man, like what gig does this person think they're on? And then and I've seen the opposite, where like everybody's kind of rocking out, and the artist is rocking out, and then there's just like somebody who's just kind of sitting there playing too many notes and looking at the ground. I've seen both sides of that.
I mean, I've experienced this with guitar audiences in my former job, and it's just so amazing because, I mean, it's great to hear about doing research. If I told someone, hey, this guy Cory, he got this job with Slash, he did research and actually figured out how low the regular guitar player's guitar was, just so he fit in, and I'm sure I would have people come back to me and go, oh man, that is bullshit, just play your ass off. And
right.
Who cares? I mean, people, not just guitarists, but I think people tend to miss this step that, that you are supporting someone else, and that someone else may be comfortable with the way things were and doesn't want someone to change the world for them.
Well, especially if you're subbing too. If you're just filling in for somebody, you don't want it to seem like it's different. You want to just be as seamless as possible. Because both Cory and I do that, from time to time, sub with bands and whatnot. And it's like, you want to just kind of go in there and make them feel like it's felt the whole time, So that means, it might mean lowering your guitar a little bit or something like that,
Hey, I did want to give a shout out to everybody watching right now on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. We've got Richie Hayden, Matt Whitcomb, Don Fowler, Vanessa Sorrentino. She says, hey guys, kisses from France. Alicia McWilliams, Sunday Morning is their best song, talking about Gwen. And Shane Mabry is out there. So if you guys have any questions for Cory and Derek, now would be a good time to throw them up in the comments, and we'll get to them here in just a minute. But
I actually have a question which freaks me out about awesome people such as yourselves, because I mean, I've been playing music for almost 50 years, but what I can't understand that you guys can do, if you get a call for Slash or call to sub, and you've got 25 songs to learn in like a couple of days, how the hell you guys manage to not only remember all the parts, but get the parts right and then perform like demons. I don't know how that's even possible.
You just put
clear your schedule. Go ahead.
I was just saying, clear your schedule and put the hours in. That's the only way,
When I did the Slash thing, I had a very limited amount of time, and I had to learn like 28 songs or something like that. So my goal was every day that I would learn 4 songs where I could play them, and then I'd videotape myself playing them. And then throughout the day, when I wasn't actually in the studio rehearsing, like if I'm walking my dog, I'm actually watching my video and going, oh yeah, I remember this part. And so it's always in your head. Plus you're learning all the arrangements. They're getting in your, in your memory, so that you just know how the songs go. And that's what I did, 4 songs every day. And once I got every song learned and I had every song recorded on my phone, I would just repetition. Like Derek says, you just put in the hours.
But I mean, it still takes a certain brain, because Matt, was it Joel Hoekstra who said he had, I think, 24 hours to learn 25 songs for I forget what it was.
I think it was Whitesnake.
Was it Foreigner or something?
No. No, it was Foreigner. I think it was Foreigner.
Yeah, he was subbing in. So he had 24 hours to learn the whole show. And it's like, how do you say yes? I mean, I would be petrified.
That would scare me too.
Okay, well that's good to know.
I remember one time I was at a George Lynch clinic, and I'm a pretty cocky person. If somebody calls me up on stage to play, I'll just wing it, right? But George was up there and he's like, yeah, if I'm gonna bring some people up to play Mr. Scary with me. And I was part of his guitar school, so he kind of called me out, and I was like, I really wanted to, man, but I was like, dude, I'm not ready to do that. That was just one song, I was like, man, I should just go out to my car and like pull up YouTube and practice it, and I'm like, oh man, but it was kind of like, that's a lot of pressure.
Well, and seriously, that's what I have done at times like that. If you think that's some way that you can at least get up without embarrassing yourself, go to your car and learn it, or take the extra time where people think you're having dinner and you're actually in the dressing room working on something,
Oh, yeah.
Do what it takes, because everybody's different, and just do what it takes where you'll feel comfortable at least getting up there and doing the best you can.
Yeah, because I remember one of my friends who's an amazing guitar player. I don't want to say his name because I don't want to get in trouble, but he joined a massively huge band with a massively long repertoire, and no one said anything to him, but he actually started the gig, and I think it was one of those things like you guys get sometimes where it's like, okay, we're going to be in Ontario in 5 days, so learn the whole set. And he had like a little book that he would kind of flip with his feet with all the chords on it or whatever, just to kind of give him some this is pre-internet. And he said, of course, what shocked me was they were filming this show for TV, and I realized that every time the camera went on me, they could see my little notes down there. So at that point, I decided I'd better delete that and start, learning all this stuff.
Right.
I always make cheat sheets when I'm like, it's a new gig or like I'm subbing on something. I chart everything out because that also helps me memorize. It helps me put a visual to it. So I'll chart everything out and then commit it to memory. But that's kind of like my first step in the process, because I can do that when I'm like on a plane or in a dressing room. I can do that without my instrument. I've got decent enough relative pitch that I can listen to something and kind of start making little charts. So I'll do that a lot of times because I might be in the middle of something else when I get a call. Like when I got called for the Gwen thing and I was on another tour, like we were busy. We were flying all over China and going to sound checks and all that, and I just had to kind of do it wherever I could, on the plane, in the dressing room. And then, yeah, once you get into a rehearsal and actually play the stuff, then it's like you don't need the cheat sheets anymore. But cheat sheets definitely help.
Okay.
Sure.
Hey, Cory, what are you doing to kind of keep your head together during this thing? Are you writing or playing or taking some time off? What's going on with you?
I see this big blank space as an opportunity to be creative in the studio. You know, they're telling you have to stay in. Okay, I got to stay in. I'll be in my studio. Mm-hmm. And so right now I'm actually with the other guys in Took. We're writing our next album. And so I'm tracking, we're writing, and we get together just like this on the internet, and we write lyrics together and come up with choruses and bridges, and so there's lots to do. And then on the recreational side of things, I like to go out on the trails, and that's been especially hard for, I know, Derek as well, because we like to go out on the trails here in LA. The last time I went on a trail here in LA was right when they were closing the trails. And they actually had helicopters hovering over top of me to tell me to get off the trail. So
wow, I didn't know they were doing that. I saw a helicopter flying around, but I didn't know that's what it was doing.
They were after Cory. Those copters were after Cory.
They wanted me.
Yeah. Well, Derek, what about you? What are you doing to keep yourself, happy and engaged?
It's I'm writing. I'm working on my own album that I want to record at some point this summer. So I'm writing for that, doing some more practicing, like working on some bass transcriptions that I've just kind of put on the back burner for years. Just trying to exercise more, trying to read more books. Just take advantage of the time, be productive.
Oh, awesome. Hey, Matt, do you want to take questions? There's a couple of questions popping up.
Yeah, we've got, let's see, we have Richie Hayden asks, how about having to change your guitar sound to fit various artists? So maybe, Cory, you could speak to that, like to get the tone that, like, what technique do you use to kind of pull that together?
Right. So one of the good things about growing up in the era that Derek and I grew up in is that there was a very healthy cover scene in bars. So I grew up emulating people's parts. So I had a good knowledge of that coming into, let's say, the Shania gig, for instance. So I knew, hey, this guitar solo needs a telly. Well, I better get a telly. Oh, and I can't use a Marshall for that, so I better use a matchless or a Fender or something. Just my experience with learning parts over the years. Obviously, when I went to play with Slash, I asked Frank what he's using, and in fact, when I flew out to replace him, I just used his rig. So to the rest of the band, nothing changed in their ears. It was all good, and I'm pretty good at dialing up sounds and that sort of thing, especially with a Kemper, because or any kind of digital thing, because you can say, oh, okay, do a little research on the internet. This guy used a Marshall in this. Okay, plug up a Marshall. This guy used a matchless or a Bogner or whatever.
Have you ever been thrown by something where you're trying to emulate something on a record and you're going like, oh man, I think that's a Marshall, but I'm not quite getting there with these samples?
The only thing that really was like a head scratcher for me was Kelly Clarkson's song Stronger. So the intro of that is like a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, like a muted 16th note passage. But in their studio trickery, they had that side chain compressor that was ducking every time the kick would hit. Yeah. Right. So I was like, well, how can I do that? And we actually came up with a way during rehearsals that we could emulate that by putting my whole guitar rig through a track within, I think we're using Ableton Live or something, and then doing like the whole studio trick right there. But we realized that wouldn't work. So I actually had to sort of, and not to mention the fact that it was a harmony guitar part. So it was a 16th note muted thing, but, 2 parts of it. And so I was like, well, do I play, chord, like a 2-note double stop kind of thing? But that sounded, because you can't get tick it really accurately on when you're going over 2 strings. It sounds like you're strumming, right? So I actually, with the Helix line 6, I programmed harmony patches that would go on and off with the correct intervals, because they weren't really normal intervals either. And then I got the music director to send from the show computer MIDI patch changes to the Helix, and that would change to the interval. So all I had to do was play one note, dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it, and and then it would play the harmony part. So I had that covered. Then it was the ding, ding, that the side chain was doing, and all I did for that was I just emulated with my picking hand, like just accented those, soft, loud, that kind of thing. And it's the closest I could get it without actually having two guitarists playing that part and running it through the studio trickery. But that, and I still didn't quite get it exactly right, but it was certainly as good as it could be, in a live situation. That's the biggest thing that threw me, was like, how do I do this?
That's a lot, man.
It was a lot, especially when I didn't have the MIDI going through and I had to actually hit the Helix patch changes, on the different beats to get the different intervals.
So
I'm sure someone could have a better way to do it, but that's the best I could come up with.
That's a great story. That's crazy.
I was going to ask Derek, Alicia McWilliams. Hang on a second. Questions are going kind of fast. How do you both prepare musically and or personally for when you hit the stage again after a length of time off, like right now in quarantine? Any new routines or changes? I know we had an NBA player, Paul Grant, on here recently, and he was saying that, like, you can't just go from being like off and then just get out there and just start playing again. You're going to hurt yourself, So what, like Derek, we'll start with Derek. What do you do to kind of prep when you're going to go on a major tour?
Well, I mean, during this time, I just don't want to let myself get out of shape mentally or physically or, with my hands. So I practice and play every day. Like I'll pick up a bass and do something every day. So I'm not losing my chops. And I'm also exercising every day, because like with the shows that we do with Gwen and Shania, we can't really be out of shape. We're running all over the stage, these big stages. And so so I just keep myself in mental and physical shape as best as I can. And then, if we have time off before a run, like before a Vegas run with Shania or Gwen, at some point before I head out there, I'll play through the set. Like we've got recordings of the show, live recordings. So just to like refresh my memory, I'll play through the set, 2 or 3 times just to get it back in my head, just to make sure I remember everything. And while I'm doing that, I can kind of remember where I am on stage. Like if I'm playing a certain song, I'm like, okay, just in my mind, I can kind of see where I am on stage at that point. So it all just kind of comes back.
Yeah, you just triggered something in my head too. It's like, players that are used to playing on bar stages or whatever, working their way up, and they say, hey man, I'm in shape. I jump around all day on this small bar stage, but it must be a bit of a head twister and a physical twister to go, now you've got all this room to negotiate.
Got a lot of ground to cover. Yeah. And the Gwen show especially, like, I don't know if you've seen, No Doubt footage from back in the day, like running around and jumping around so much that like, when we do that stuff with Gwen, we kind of have to embody that spirit as well. So like, we're just running around. I mean, crisscrossing from one side of the stage to the other and jumping around. I mean, it's like a total cardio workout.
And is it difficult when, you've got your parts together and then the choreographer says, okay, we're going to do this. And all of a sudden you go like, oh, great. I've got to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with my legs and hands. And I got to do like the opposite of that with my bass part. Does that stuff ever come up?
Luckily, no. Like when I've worked with choreographers on these shows, like they're not actually telling the band how to move. They're just telling us where to be on stage. So I don't have to do like choreographed dance moves or anything like that. Thank God, because that would just be horrible. But it's more just like, okay, at this point in the song, you're going to be, front stage right. You're going to be out there. So once you're out there, however you move is up to you.
Have you ever tripped before? Like fallen down?
Totally.
The one I did only once, and it wasn't that bad. It was during a blackout. I was subbing with Shakira about a year and a half ago, summer 2018, and because I hadn't done the show before, it was just like learn the stuff, come in and play in an arena, and we didn't really get to run everything. So when the encore happened, it's a complete blackout. I didn't know if like the band went to gather together on one side of the stage and like enter together. I didn't know like how that all worked. So I just kind of like went behind like the big video screen. I just kind of went behind there and was just waiting to go back out for the encore. And then when I started walking back out, I didn't know the stage that well because I hadn't had time to get to know where everything was. And it's pitch black, and I just totally tripped over the drum riser because I had no idea.
Oh, no.
Luckily, no one saw it. It was during a complete blackout, so no one saw it because it was pretty ugly. But that's the only time I've ever like just tripped on stage.
Cory, it sounds like you got a good story about tripping.
I'm trying to think which one to tell. I'll give you an option. When I fell on Reba McEntire's head, or when I fell off the stage 10 feet down onto my back while throwing guitar picks into the audience.
Oh my gosh.
Which one do you want to hear?
Let's hear the Reba story. That sounds pretty good.
So we did a tour with Kelly and Reba where it was like a double bill, and we had both bands on stage at the same time, and it was a 3-tiered stage, and I was on the lowest level as my home position. And every night before the show, I would go up to the top where the drummer was, and I would, high five, have a good show, everybody, high five the bass player, have a good show. And then I'd go back down to my lower level, right? Well, this particular night, the show, the arena lights went out prematurely. I was high fiving the drummer on the top level, and the lights went out. And you know how your eyes take a while to adjust? So it was like pitch black. I'm like, oh my God, the show's starting. I'm not in the right position. I have to go to my spot. And I knew which direction it was, but I really couldn't see. And so I started hitting, kitty corner towards my spot on the stage. And I stepped into a big hole in the stage, which was the elevator where Kelly and Reba come up as the big reveal. So they're down like, 10 feet or 15 feet or something. And I step into this hole with my Les Paul on and land on top of Reba's head.
Oh my God.
And I was completely fine because they broke my fall. I landed in Kelly had my leg, but Reba really got the brunt of it. But the stage manager goes, stop the show. He's on his walkie-talkie, but the intro music had already started and they weren't stopping it. So it's like, okay, the show must go on. People out front are hearing this intro music. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, but I really couldn't see. It was so dark. And I just knew nobody was dead at this point. Yeah. And I still had to get to my spot on stage because the curtain was going to come up and I wouldn't be there. And so the show must go on. So I'm just like, I don't know who I'm talking to right now, but I'm so sorry. Oh my God. And I ran up to my spot on the stage and, the curtain lifts and I'm like looking up to see them coming out, wondering what the carnage is going to be. And the aftermath of what just happened, I don't know if maybe the strings on my headstock, cut her face and there's blood coming down her face or what. And they come up, the spotlights are on them, and Reba's like fixing her hair as she's coming. And she didn't even bat an eye. She played the whole show like nothing had ever happened. And
total pro.
Yeah. She had to go to the chiropractor the next day, and something she'll never forget, and neither will I. But it could have been a lot worse than it was. Thank goodness.
She must be an awesome person, because there's some artists you fell on where you'd be going home that evening.
Well, yeah. In fact, somebody said to me as I was walking to my spot, it said something like, "See you later," or "You're fired," or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
And I went to her dressing room later, and I just apologized profusely, and we had a bit of a chuckle. But like I said, she did have to go to the chiropractor the next day. So I threw some. How could you not, with a Les Paul and a full-grown man landing on your head, right?
Well, we're getting to the top of the hour here, and I know we'd love to hang out with you guys for another hour, but you guys got to get back to your projects and your families and quarantining and things like that. But I want to give everybody a quick around the horn, and everybody gets the last word, and we'll start with Mike and we'll end with Derek down here. Okay. So Mike, what you got?
Oh, I just got thanks to Derek, thanks to Cory. Awesome stories. It's great to get the inner workings of what this means, and I also appreciate your sharing knowledge about not only how to play but how to act when you play. I think this is really valuable for upcoming musicians.
definitely.
So thank you guys. It was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate coming on to this. A couple of my friends have been on this before. Todd Kearns, of course, from Took, and I've seen Roddy Chong on here with you guys. Roddy was one of the fiddle players in Shania's band, so now he plays the TSO. But yeah, thanks so much for having us, and especially to my good bud Derek there for dropping in on this as well. Been awesome. Thank you.
All right, Derek, bring us home, man. Make it good.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you guys for having us. Cory, thanks for bringing me in on it. This was fun. And everybody just stay safe and healthy, and let's just hope that we can get through this quickly and that we can get back out to playing and hearing live music again soon, because I know I miss it. You know, I miss playing it and I miss hearing it.
And real quick, back to Cory, where can people find out more about you?
So you can find my band Took at tookracks.ca. We're on Instagram, Took Rocks as well. We're on Facebook, Took Rocks. My website is corychurko.com. My Instagram, you'll find me at the same spot, Cory Churko. And that's where you'll find me, on Twitter and Facebook too.
And Derek?
DerekFrank.com, DerekFrank. It's my website, and then Instagram at DerekFrankBass. That's where you can find me.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for being on the show. I did want to remind everybody this Sunday at 2 p.m. we're going to have a community meetup on Zoom. So just join the Kingdom of Rock Backstage Pass Facebook group, and there'll be a link in there for you. And for guests of the show, we have a 1 p.m. Zoom for all the people that have been on the show. So you guys are, of course, invited to that. And that's it. Kingdom of Rock out.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Take care.